3 high-profile national leaders are among those the mayor of Washington, D.C. has enlisted to help her city with its coronavirus response. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, former Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff, and former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Named the Reopen D.C. Advisory Group. It will recommend when it is safe to reopen businesses, schools, and other establishments. And joining us now, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser. And there's a little bit of an issue with her sound, but we're going to try and get this done. This is a great group of people. What are the different bars that they're looking to reach to try and make a really safe reopening structure plan that can be released to the people of D.C.?
Well, thank you, Mika, for that. And our health department officials and health experts that work for D.C. government are going to make the decision about when. Our advisory group, however, is working with 11 sector committees to determine how each of those sectors, those sectors can safely open. What protocols, what tools will they need, what training for staff, and how they can help us work through the phases of a safe reopening in Washington, D.C. And let's be clear, everyone wants to get our vibrant, bustling economy back, businesses open, and people back to work. But we know that we have to do it in a safe way so that we don't suffer a rebound.
Gene Robinson of The Washington Post has a question for you. Gene?
Mayor Bowser, good to talk to you remotely.
Hi, Gene.
One question: I'm fine. How are you? Listen, as you're working through this process, meanwhile, Congress is coming back. Congress is going to be in session next week. When Congress is in session, that means congressional staff. That means all the support people. How is this going to work? How is that going to comport with the social distancing that you've required, that you believe is necessary? And is that not going to work counter to what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, Gene, essential workers have to go to work. I'm an essential worker. About 40% of D.C. government employees who are answering unemployment calls, picking up the trash, making sure that we're safe with our fire and EMS and police departments are all reporting to their workstations. The same is true for the federal government. While the vast majority of federal workers in D.C. are teleworking, which we continue to encourage the Office of Personnel Management to do, others have essential duties that require them to report to their offices. And we know that Congress falls in that category. Our country needs relief. Our workers need relief. Hospitals, state and local governments need relief. So the Congress needs to work on all of those things. We've worked closely with the architect of the Capitol, who's responsible for a lot of their buildings and grounds and administration, to make sure that they have all of the information that we have and they're practicing strict social distancing.
Mayor Bowser, it's Willie Geist. Good to have you on this morning. As you know, testing is crucial here so we can figure out who's got it and when we can go back to work. It factors into everything you just described there, but it's tough to get a test in the United States right now. About 2% of Americans have been able to get one. What does that look like in the District of Columbia? How difficult is it to get a test? And what do you need as a mayor to get those numbers up?
What we need is more supply. We have 11 testing sites across the district. I just opened another citywide site. We've also asked our residents to call on their providers who are also offering free testing. And yet we still think that we need more people who are symptomatic and who have been exposed to the virus, either through their work or either through into a close contact. If they're not feeling well, they need to be tested. You mentioned First Lady Obama, who reached out to us and asked how she could help. And she's doing a robocall to D.C. residents today who are in vulnerable populations, reminding them of the symptoms of COVID and how to call our citywide provider if they're not connected with a doctor to get tested. So we participate in all the calls with the task force at the White House. I had a call with Dr. Fauci last week looking at our testing strategies. And we know that we continue to need the federal government to step up in this role for supplies largely. And we know if we can have a steady flow of those supplies, we can have the testing capacity that we need.
The mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, thank you very much for coming on the show. Good luck with everything. And still ahead on Morning Joe.
I call it the unseen enemy. You call it, there's 1,000 different terms for it, but whatever, it snuck up on us.
President Trump on March 18th, telling reporters that the coronavirus, quote, snuck up on us. Nope. Now the Washington Post is detailing the many, many times the president was warned about the virus in his daily briefing reports. We'll get to that new reporting. Plus, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer will be our guest. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.